Well, good afternoon. I hope we've got some people out there joining us. Welcome to our very first Nature Journaling Club event. It is live on Facebook. My name is Haley and I'm a naturalist at the Cable Natural History Museum. Today we're going to be practicing painting loose watercolor flowers. So I'm definitely not a super experienced artist, but I've been learning and taking lots of classes online over the last few years, and I just like to have fun with my sketchbook. I'm not a professional artist by any means, and I've found that drawing styles that are really realistic are very difficult and really time consuming. So I've really gravitated towards these simpler ways of drawing, being more doodly and loose with it. And I've found that now that I've started drawing and painting, I find inspiration everywhere. This is one of my daughter's onesies, and I've just always loved this style of these just simple flowers, especially this pink one I think is so fun. There's very little detail to it, but you can still tell that it's a rose. It's very simple, but you can still tell what it is. So that's kind of what the styles that I've been trying to learn. And this example, I took a class on Skillshare with Terry Runyon, and she demonstrated this loose watercolor style with generic flower shapes. And I wondered if I could take that style and paint actual flowers, real flowers that I see. And so this is my first attempt at doing that, painting real flowers, which turned out pretty good. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to try to do today. If you are following along with me, you'll want to have all of your watercolor supplies ready. So first you'll want some paper, and I'm using my sketchbook as just a mixed media paper. You might have watercolor paper, and even if you have just regular computer paper, that's fine too, just for practicing. And you need your paints as well, and a brush. I'm using this kind of rounded brush. We need some water for our watercolor. I like to use two jars of water, one for dirty and one for clean. You can definitely get away with using just one jar. I also have a paper towel handy for drying off my brush or fixing any mistakes as well. And today we're just going to be working from photos that I pulled from iNaturalist, is a good source to find natural photos. And I just pulled some photos of flowers that I really like, and we'll see how many we get through today. But I think we'll start with this lupin, because they're beautiful and they're fun to paint. So the first thing I want to do is mix up a color and try to match that petal color. And so for my paints, I've got a little spray bottle to just wet down my paints, get them started and soft. You can just also take your brush and dab some water on each of the paints as well. And I've found this has been really handy using, these are just straight colors painted from my palette. So it's kind of handy I can hold it up and try to match which colors to start with, what's maybe the closest. And these lupin petals are kind of a bluish purple. So I think I'll try to use my light purple there, and that blue is maybe a little too bright, so I might try it with this little darker blue, and we'll see what happens. So I've got my light purple, and I found I don't clean off my palette as often as maybe I could. Nothing in nature is a really solid single color, so it's kind of nice to have other colors already mixed in that I can pull in and just change the color a little bit. So here's my blue, and it's kind of a light light color here, so I want it watered down a little bit. And that's maybe looking close. So I'm going to move my picture up here and just kind of test my colors up here. And I think I've got that fairly close to our Lupin color, so I might start with that. This color mixed up. And maybe I should have cleaned off my palette. Now it's mixing with this darker blue. And maybe I'll start from kind of the bottom here, leaving space for the leaves underneath. So these, I'm just going to kind of place the petals where I see them, and I'm not going for an exact one for one. I'm not painting every single petal, but just getting the basic shapes down. There's some kind of facing in the middle here, and then trying to move my brush different directions. To get each of those little, they're kind of pod shaped. And rounding out the tips. And then I'm seeing as we get to the top, sometimes they run into each other. I can make them kind of go in the same way. And as we get up to the top, it kind of narrows up at the top here. And I might need to mix a little more here. More of my blue with a little bit of purple. And it actually, as it gets up towards the top, it gets a little more pink, where the buds aren't quite ready to pop yet. So, see if I can make that bluey purple again. And then I'm going to add a little bit of pink. I think I've got, we'll try this one up here. Kind of a reddish, pinkish. At the top. And that's a little too purple for me, so I'm going to take a little more of this pink and drop it in. And that's maybe a little more vibrant than we need, but that's okay. And I'm letting the colors mix on the page here. For just a soft and loose effect. Then I'm going to come in and try to add that stem. And that stem is kind of a reddish, purplish color. So I think I'll go for one of my darker reds. Make sure it's nice and wet. And I'll pull in a little bit of that purpley color. Might, before I put it on, test it up there. That looks pretty close. We'll bring our stem down. And then it disappears behind the leaves there. And then add in some connections where these guys are coming in. And I think I'm missing there's kind of a gap here, so we'll try to fill that in with a little more of our purpley blue. Test that out again. That's pretty close. I'm going to take some of the water off my brush so it matches. I might just add some extra layers in here to mix in some of those different colors. It's looking kind of okay. Hopefully identifiable, that's always my goal. I'm going to round out the top of these. They're not quite so pointy. And then we'll go in for the leaves on these lupin. Are really, they have sort of long, skinny, kind of star-shaped or almost flower-shaped leaves. So we'll go try to match my greens. This green might be the closest I'm seeing. That's my third green. And I'm just going to mix it into my greens that I already have here. And then to make it a little more earthy, I think I'll add a little bit of this olive green to it too. Test that out. I think that's pretty close to our lupin color. So let's try making that kind of star-shaped, flower-shaped leaf. If I was being really technical in my nature journal, I might count how many little leaflets there are. But for today, we're just practicing. I just want to get the general sense of our flower here. And they've got kind of that white center in the middle. So I'm going to take my paper towel and fold a little tip of it and see if I can just take off a little bit of our paint in the middle to give that kind of white center, which worked okay. And so we'll add a couple layers of our leaves here. Might mix in a little more of the olive green just to make a little different green for some contrast. We got these. Up a little that center part. You always want to make sure our paints are watery enough. So let's do one more layer here. And they look a little flat, so I might come in, just drop in another green for some contrast. Works a little better when it's still wet, so that color blends in a little more. Looks a little better on this one than adding it on top of this already dried one. So I think that's pretty good for now for our lupin. Maybe not the most amazing rendition of it, but just for something quick in, how long did that take us? 10 minutes? It's something that's pretty identifiable, and I think, you know, it's just practice in my sketchbook, and I think next time I would do it a little bit differently. So let's try another one. Maybe I'll skip over to our columbine, which are always so fun to find out in the woods. And so first I'm gonna start up at the top with our flower, and working in watercolor I'm gonna start with our lightest color, because that which would be our yellow. If I start with the red, it would be, I couldn't get that that light color in as well. So I'm going to start with the yellow. And I've got pretty much a straight up yellow here. Mixing it over here. Actually got a little bit of green mixed in there. That'll be okay. And to make it a little less lemony yellow, I'm going to add in a little bit of my, I think this is yellow ochre. It's kind of a little more earthy tone. And I just look at the shape, the basic shapes we can find in these flowers. So this one, that yellow part looks like it's a rectangle with, then we can add those little dangly bits. So I'm going to start with just making a rectangle, and then little bits hanging off. And I don't want that yellow to mix too much with our red, so I'm going to let that dry for a minute and maybe start making our leaves down at the bottom. And it was kind of hard to find a picture where this was obvious, but our columbines have this bushy area down at the bottom, and then they generally have a longer stem that leads up to this dangling flower. So we'll make that bushy area on the bottom, and they've got these leaves that have kind of multiple lobes to them. Looks like each one has 3 lobes with kind of rounded edges on each one. And the colors in these photos are very different, so I think I'll try to mix something that's somewhere between this really light green in this photo, and this one shows more of a darker foresty kind of green. So I think I'll try to mix something between those. I've already got some green there. Add some water in. I think I want these to maybe be a little darker than the lupin that we already have, so there's more contrast. So I'll take some of my darker green, it's a little more foresty green, and maybe mix it just with more paint so it's not as translucent as as my other leaves were. Let's see how that looks. That's maybe okay. Maybe I'll just see what happens if I add a little bit of this green in. So it's fun to just play with colors. If you don't really like a color, just see what happens when you add something different or more or less of something. It's fun to play around with those. Let's try that color. Looks pretty good. And I'm gonna go for these 3 lobes, and it looks like the leaves are kind of in a cluster. So let's see what we can do with that. Kind of making those lobes. And some of these are going to be overlapping, so you might not see the definition on every leaf, but we're getting the kind of general just the feel of it. Add in a little lighter green just for some contrast. And then I'm trying to draw them at different angles too. That one got kind of blobby, which is fine. There's one lobe, do another lobe sticking out. They almost look like dinosaur feet. Dinosaur tracks. Do a leaf down here, kind of pointing the other upside down. And maybe I'll try letting these dry a little bit and coming in with another layer. We'll see how that works. And we'll come back up to the top of our flower. And I think it's pretty dry on the bottom here, but I still see a puddle at the top, which is okay with me because when I add that red, it will blend a little bit so there's not a super harsh line, which I like. So if I'm comparing my reds, it looks like this fourth color down, this red looks the closest, and maybe a little bit of this darker brownish red will work. So let's try mixing that up. Here's my bright red. And if you don't have different, as many colors as I do, if you don't have different reds to play with, if you have a really bright red, one way to tone it down is to add the color a little bit of the color that's opposite on the color wheel. I've got a little color wheel here, so if you've got this really bright red and you want to tone it down a little bit, you could try adding just a tiny bit of green and see what that happens. See what happens with that. I've got my bright red there, and come in with a little bit of my darker red. See if that gets me close to our Lupin color, or Columbine, what we're going after. That's maybe a little dark, a little brownish, so I'm going to add back in some of my bright red, because they are really, really bright flowers. Let's see what that looks like. I think that might be close enough for me, so I'm going to come in. I want to do, they've got kind of these horns sticking up almost, so I'm going to start with that. It's thick, and then it's going to come up to a point. I've got a little bit of a ball on the end, almost. Bring a little bit of my red in to blend with that yellow. And then there's another one kind of up behind. Got those 4 horn shapes. And then they've got these extra petals hanging down. So I'll grab some of this. And it is maybe a little bright for me, so I'm going to bring back in some of my darker red. Add that in. That looks like. Bring down this petal. See one kind of hiding out back here. And another one over here. This is a really good practice to actually really look at what you're painting. You know, if you were to paint a Lupin just from memory and paint what you think should be there, it might end up looking a little funny. But with this, like, I would think this petal should be the same shape as these other petals, this one back here, but because of the angle, it's actually really, really thin. Maybe it's hard to see my photo on the video, but that one's actually really thin. It's not the same shape, even though it looks like it might be the same, if that makes sense. And then there are some dark spots, some shadows in there. So I might add a little bit of a gray, and I don't want too much, so I'm just gonna use this little bit that I've got already mixed up over here. See what happens if I add that in. And it really spreads because It's still quite wet there. I've got quite a puddle, but maybe that's okay. Or maybe it's going too far, and I'll use my paper towel here to soak up a little bit of that. Spread it out. See how that goes. See how that dries. And then we need, what else do we need for our lupin? Our stem, and we'll fill in another layer of leaves here. So my stem is pretty green at the top here where it's hanging from, and then it turns into kind of a reddish purplish color. So we'll start with, it's a pretty dark green. And I can see it between the petals there, or those little horn shapes. Make sure I have enough water on my brush. Oh, that was maybe too much, it got pretty thick. I'm gonna bring it down to my leaves, and then because it's so wet here, I can add in that purpley reddish color, and it'll mix with the green, hopefully look nice. And I kind of got this reddish purpley over here. Maybe a little more red. Maybe I have too much green here. Might soak up some of that. I can get in this reddish purplish. Well, I'm not crazy about that. That's something that I would do a different way next time, but we'll call that all right for our stem at least. And then I do want to go back in and add another layer of those lobed leaves. Mix in some different greens. Just to fill it in, because they are kind of bushy with really overlapping leaves. The brush is a little wet there. Overlapping look is kind of nice. It's not super realistic because you obviously can't see leaves through another leaf in real life, but it gives the idea of different layers. I'd say that's all right for our columbine. Not too bad. Definitely identifiable. I'm sure if you showed that to anyone that knew their flowers, they would know right away that's a columbine. So that's always my goal, just to make sure it's identifiable. And then maybe we'll do one more flower together. I think let's go for this marsh marigold. I just saw some of these when we went for a walk at the visitor center in Ashland yesterday. So they're just starting to bloom in marshy areas. And I love these really bright yellow flowers, and their leaves are pretty round with a little notch on one side there. So let's see what we can do with a marigold. See if we can get everything in the frame here. So just like our columbine yellow, I want kind of a similar, it's a bright yellow, but not too lemony, which is the yellow that I have here, is pretty lemony. I'm going to mix in a little more of my yellow ochre. Make that earthy tone. You could also try just a little bit of brown, see what that would do. Or if we're looking at our color wheel, you have this bright yellow, could try adding in a little bit of purplish. Just a tiny bit will help tone it down a little bit. And I want to make sure I have enough. I always make that mistake where I don't mix up enough of a color, and then halfway through I have to remix, and it's never the same color. Never quite the same. Make sure we've got plenty of water. I'll test that one out. That looks like a pretty bright yellow. That'll make a nice marsh marigold. And I'm not really doing these to scale, but these marsh marigold are low shrubs, so I'll start these flowers down here. And this again, I'm painting just what I see, and I know there's a petal facing me on this side, but really all you see is a little line of that petal. So I'm not drawing it as if I was looking straight down at the flower. And the next one kind of comes up here. Let's go for maybe this one. Looks a little more open. Got a little petal facing us. These are really more of our like standard flower shape, kind of the generic flower. Odd numbers always look better, so I'll add in one more. Maybe I'll go for that one. Clips getting in the way here. I've got these clips on, help fold your paper a little bit flatter. As the thinner your paper is, the more it will buckle with the water. So and then I think I'll let those dry a little bit. I want to add in that kind of central part is still very yellow, but it's maybe a little darker, a little orangish. And I think if my flowers here are so wet that if I add that in now, it's just going to spread over the whole flower. So I'm going to go for doing some leaves. Clean off my brush here. And there's a lot of different greens, and I also am thinking about how it's going to blend in with my other flowers here, and I just want the green to be a little bit different than the other ones that I have here, and I might, for this one, add a little more of my yellowish green. And I don't want it too neon, so we'll add in a little darker green, and maybe my paints are drying out here. A little bit of olive green. And these flowers are pretty round with that little slot on one side, so kind of like a lily pad shape. So there is exactly what I was talking about not doing, is drawing what you think it should look like. And that's exactly what I did. I just drew straight on what I thought that round leaf looks like. So let me try painting what I see more. So this one has a little lobe there and comes up around. I don't know if that's much different, but I tried to do that one at a little different angle, which maybe didn't work out so much, but that's all right. We'll try another one. This leaf actually looks like part of it is broken, or it's that open part on this side is at least a little bigger. So I'll try adding that one in. Maybe try at least one more to fill in. At least get some of those rounded shapes. I'm not sure what those are supposed to be, but it'll be fine. And I can also add in my stems. So they're connected on fairly long stems that are kind of that yellowish green, probably maybe a little bit more yellowy than the leaves are. So I'm going to mix in a little more of my yellow green. Get those stems connected. And then I want to add that last detail in the middle of the flowers, that little bit darker yellow. And I think for that one, I'll add in, get some of my yellow here, and make it a little bit more orangey. So I'll come over to my orange here. See what that looks like. Maybe want a little more orange. While I'm painting, I'm also thinking not necessarily trying to paint it exactly how it looks, get that color exactly right. I also want to make sure that there's enough contrast that I can actually see the detail in there. So maybe making it a little more orangey than it is in real life. So I'll put in that little middle bit. And my flowers are still wet, so there's color bleeding around, but that's all right with me. I think that's looking pretty good. Hopefully that one would be identifiable as a marsh marigold. So not too bad. I bet I could give any one of these to my mom for Mother's Day and she would be delighted. So I think that's gonna do it for my painting practice today. I don't think I'm gonna take the time right now, but we could go back in once this is all dry and paint in some more details. You could do kind of outlines of some of the lupin petals, add in some lines, add some veins into the leaves, add an outline to the marigold petals. You could come in with that, either with paint, or I also like to use colored pencils or pen to fill in those details. This is just a practice that I did of a yellow coneflower. That's just the shape. I just used one color of paint and then went back in with colored pencil to add in some details. So you could do that too if you want to spice it up a little bit. But I think that will wrap up our painting practice today. If anyone would be willing to share, I'd love to see what you painted today or where you take this later if you practice some more. This video should be up on the museum's Facebook page after this ends, so you can come back to it if you want and come back and add pictures to the comments in that post. Would be great to see. And if you're interested in more of our Nature Journaling Club, we've got our next event is in 2 weeks. Will be another Facebook Live video where you can paint along with me. That next time we'll be doing beetles and bugs, which are super fun. And on June 8th is our first in-person meetup, a program in Cable, and you can learn more all about the Nature Journaling Club and sign up for that in-person program at cablemuseum.org/NJC is Nature Journal Club. So you can find information for that. And thank you all so much for being here with me today, and hope to see you at another Nature Journaling Club event sometime soon. Thanks, and have a great day, everyone.